All right. Well, things are pretty crazy. I appreciate you joining the class meeting. You know, the last week has been strange. I think a lot of people don't have electricity. A lot of people may not have internet access. And so I've been having to make pretty strange decisions as far as which appliances to try and run on the battery and so on. Rebecca doesn't have power for 9 days. I only had it out for a week. I got it last night after dark, so still no internet, but I finally got electricity again. So the university is open though, and we're having classes and we're instructed to move forward with the semester, and so that's what we're going to do. We'll go over a couple of announcements on this slide, and then I'm going to show you the revised course schedule that I emailed out a little bit earlier today. Homework number 4, which, boy, you've had on your plate for a good long time. That was originally going to be due, I think, a week ago today. So it's now going to be due on Wednesday the 24th, and homework number 5 will be due a week from today. So it'll be due on Monday the 1st of March. So we're kind of going to get back into the swing of things. Now, midterm exam 1 was supposed to be this Wednesday, but it's going to be delayed by a week. So that will be conducted on the 3rd of March. And the way it works is that at 10:30 a.m., the exam will become available on Blackboard. It will appear at the top of our class page. And so you'll have 2 hours to take that exam. And it's written so that students could complete it during a 50-minute class meeting. And what I mean by that is most students in a class would be able to finish it in 50 minutes. You know, top students will probably finish the exam in 20 minutes. And there are a handful of people who are just unprepared for the test, and no matter how much time you give them, it wouldn't be enough. And so I never conceive of a test so that everybody has as much time as they'd want, because not everyone is going to be prepared. But in a normal semester, I would see almost all of the students finishing within that 50-minute time frame. So you can see I've given you 2 hours. The extra time is just in case you want to print the exam, then that gives you time for printing. At the end of the test, you're going to need to scan it to a PDF. You know, your handwritten calculations are going to be submitted the same way that our homework assignments are. And so you're going to be uploading it to Blackboard. It's likely that your exam will also include a question using Microsoft Excel. And so you'll also upload your Excel file to Blackboard. So that's a 2-hour window. I don't think you'll need 2 hours, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. And you're allowed to use textbooks, your notes, the notes that I provided you and your handwritten notes. You can use your previously computed homework assignments. But what you're not allowed to do on the test is refer to any outside websites or collaborate with any people. All right, so that's the announcements, and let's take a look at how that appears as far as the course schedule that's been revised. Let me bring that up onto the screen. I emailed this to you, and it's also posted on Blackboard in case you ever need to refer to it there. It's available. So the way things worked is that on Friday the 12th, I posted a homework help video online. And then a week ago today, we did have our class meeting at its original time, but then we had 2 classes that were canceled due to the inclement weather. So Wednesday and Friday of last week were canceled. And so what we're doing is today picks back up. Today's going to be lecture number 13. And what that means is that it eliminates 2 classes from the end of the semester. We were supposed to go through 40 class meetings in the semester. Now if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll notice that we only get through 38 class meetings. And so what I've done to accomplish that is I've eliminated 1 topic, and then I've combined 2 topics into the same class meeting, and you just won't get as much depth in depreciation and taxes. So we'll kind of just skim through the surface issues on those subjects rather than going into a little bit more detail. But everything else is basically shifted downward. The midterm exam that was going to be Wednesday of this week is now Wednesday of next week. And one other thing I wanted to draw your attention to, and I'll make this announcement again on Wednesday, is that this Friday's class meeting is going to be an online lecture. I have other commitments that won't enable me to have a live class meeting, and so I'll post a recorded lecture online and give you the links for that in advance. So I apologize. I know that if there's anything even less good than a virtual class, it's a recorded virtual class, but that's all we'll be able to do on Friday of this week. So are there any specific questions related to these revised schedule and announcements for the rest of the semester?
Hi, I have a question about the time of the exam.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says 10:30 to 12:30, and next week I actually have an exam from 10 to 12 next Wednesday. Is it supposed to be 10:30 to 12:30?
Well, let's see. Oh, you know what? I apologize. Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. That's a mistake. Because our class meeting is from 12 to 1. Yeah. So what that is supposed to say is from 11:30 to 1:30. So it's a 2-hour window that straddles 30 minutes on either side of our class. So 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Thank you. I appreciate you noticing that. Sometimes I got to rely on the students for the finer points. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, so our class meeting is from 12 to 12:50, and so you'll get all of that time as well as some time before and some time after. That's my intention. So thanks for noticing that. A lot's going on, and that one slipped through the cracks. Anything else? Any other questions before we start talking about present worth analysis a little bit more? If you do have questions, feel free to give me a call on Teams or on the phone, or send me an email. And one thing that occurred to me is it may be that some people don't know how to place a call on Teams. And so let me pull up Teams really quickly and just show you how easy it really is, because it's a pretty straightforward thing. And I hate to think that anybody needed help but wasn't sure how to reach out. So as soon as Teams loads, I'm just going to show you how you can initiate a video call to someone. And the thing I like about Teams instead of like an email is I can show you things. And I can ask a follow-up question if I don't understand what your original question is, or I can share screen, and you can share your screen with me in case you want to show me the work you've done already. So Teams is a lot better than trying to send me an email, although email's okay. If that's what you got, we'll try and make it work. But so here's what Microsoft Teams looks like, and across the top, no matter which window you're in, there's that search window at the top. And so Teams is running a little bit slow. I've got tons of programs open right now, and so it wouldn't ordinarily be laggy like that. So if you just in the search area type a name, so if you type my name, like Wait, W-A-I-T, then it may not come up because I'm searching for myself. But let me put in another faculty member, Michelson. So Dr. Michelson. So when I click on that, then it would give me the option over here to either start a video call or an audio call. So you should feel free to reach out anytime if I can be of assistance. All right, so let's talk about present worth analysis. What we've done before with present worth analysis is the idea of a decision criteria, where we were comparing alternatives, and sometimes options don't have the same useful life. And so the first tool we looked at for addressing the differences in useful life was the least common multiple approach. And in that approach, what we did is we repeated the cash flow diagrams in cycles until they terminated in the same number of years. And then the one that we picked was the alternative that had the highest non-negative present worth. And so you're using your minimum attractive rate of return as the discount rate. You're taking any amount that's in the future to times 0, and then whichever has the highest positive present worth is the alternative that will be most profitable, and that's what you select. And so this idea of decision criteria is really important, because when I ask you a question like which option should you choose, it's not enough to just tell me which option is best, but also you have to tell me why it's best. Like, what was the standard that you applied, or what was the decision criteria that guided you to that conclusion. And so the first approach that we applied for resolving this problem is if they're different useful lives, it's like comparing apples and oranges. It's just it's a comparison that can't be drawn because of the time value of money issues and different amounts in different years. And so the way that we looked at in the class meeting before was LCM. Least common multiple is where you're repeating things in cycles so that they both terminate at the same number of years. And then you'd find out which has the highest positive present worth, and that's the alternative you should select. There are other ways to handle it, though. So here we have the same option A versus option B, and you'll notice option A is shorter than option B. This alternative A only will last for 6 years after initially purchasing the equipment, whereas option B lasts for 9. And so the contract services approach says, let's just rent some similar equipment for the remaining years of option A until we get through the same time horizon as option B. So you can see, compared to the original cash flow diagram, which option A was only going for 6 years, what we're doing is we're going out and finding a place like Sunbelt or Bosley. There are these equipment rental places, and whether it's heavy equipment for construction or whether it's computer equipment that could be leased for a company, people are in the business of leasing hardware. And so what you would do is you would go and rent the same equipment that is option A, and you may have a new additional cost for that. Oh, my mouse isn't quite, there we go. So you'll notice that in year 7, 8, and 9, option A has an additional expense. So we're assuming it continues to generate the same revenue. It's a perfect replacement for what we were using before, so it's able to generate the same revenue. But now, instead of a big lump sum payment to purchase the item one time, what we're doing is each year we're paying in order to use the equipment. So from 6 to 7, we have to pay for the equipment at the end of the 7th year. So here at 7 is where we're paying for the use of the equipment from 6 to 7. And then we also, as a lump sum, get our corresponding revenue for that year. And then the same thing for the 8th and the 9th year. And then it ends at 9 and allows us to compare the two cash flow diagrams together. So how would you find the present worth for this alternative? Well, this is an annual series that can be taken to A. So you could do find P given A on this. But if you do find P given A on this annual series, it's not going to take it all the way to year 0. It's going to do, if you do a P/A, it would find an equivalent lump sum in year 6, and then you'd take that single lump sum from 6 to 0. Okay? So through that lease, we complete the study period and are able to compare the two alternatives, and they have the same useful life. All right, so that's what I'd like you to attempt here in the in-class exercise for today. If you've got your in-class exercise printed out, what we're going to look at here in ICE 13 is the contract services approach. Which alternative is better at 4%? So here's our 4% table. We're going to use the table lookup factors and find an equivalent single value present worth for option B and an equivalent single lump sum value at the present for option A. And so option A, like I was just mentioning before, this annual series in years 7 through 9, first of all, you're going to find a lump sum amount in year 6, and then you'll discount it as a find P given F from 6 to 0. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to put you into those breakout rooms. We haven't tried that in a while since class has been canceled and so on. You can discuss, ask questions amongst each other, check answers and so on. I'll flip through the breakout rooms just to see if anybody wants to ask me questions while I'm there, and then we'll rejoin together and look at the solution and see, is option A better or is option B better? And remember, when you apply this present worth analysis, you have to state what is the decision criteria. Like, how did you know which option is better? Okay, so let's see, comparing option A to option B, which is more profitable. And remember that this extra $4,000 in years 7, 8, and 9, to get that to the present, we have to use a two-step process. And let me show you what my calculations looked like for that. Okay, so here's what I said, is the 11,500, that's already at the present. So we don't need to do any conversions to the initial cost, and the minus sign is because that was an outflow. And now I'm going to move the 5,000 per year. So there was 9 of those, and I want to find out the present equivalent. So P/A says find P given A. So we're going to find the present equivalent of that annual series at 4% interest, and there's 9 of the payments. And so down here, I tell you the lookup factor that is, based on. So 7.4353. And then the 5,000 was positive. It's not a minus sign either here nor here because that was a revenue. But then the 4,000 per year, it's a two-step calculation. What I've got here is, first of all, the P/A. So that's saying find some lump sum in year 6 that's the equivalent of that annual series. And then the secondary part here is I'm saying then multiply it by the P/F factor. And what that'll do is it'll start to treat this amount in year 6 as a future value. So it's the future value, and we want to find the present equivalent of it. So it's a little bit tricky because when we were doing this part, we were treating the amount in year 6, it's like we were calling it a present value. It wasn't really. We knew it was in year 6, but the P/A, what that really means is find a lump sum amount 1 year before the annual series. And so that's called a present value, but really in our case, it was in year 6. And so then to get it to the true present, which is times 0, that's when we had to multiply it by a follow-up P/F. So the P/A factor is 2.7751, and then the P/F factor 0.7905. And so the overall value of option A is 16,900, because what we have here is the initial cost of 11,500, and then this is the present value of the revenue. So 9 $5,000 payments is not worth 5,000 times 9. It's worth less than that because of the time value of money, because of discounting. The inflationary effect means that money in the future isn't as valuable in today's terms. And so if we want to know the today equivalent value of that, we have to discount the future amounts. And so that's why this lookup factor is less than 9. If the interest rate was 0, then that factor would be 9. But our interest rate is more than 0, so that's what brings it down. So the $37,176, that's the present worth of the revenue. And then $4,000 3 times in year 7, 8, and 9 to get it all the way to times 0 has an equivalent of negative, because it's an outflow, 87, 72, and 65 cents. And then at the very end, by the way, you'll notice that I rounded off based on how many significant figures I had in the factors. And so one of these factors only had 4 digits, and so I rounded this off to the nearest $10. So 16,900 is the answer to that present value of option A. Okay, now this is really important stuff. Are there any questions before we move further? And don't be shy, because if you're wondering, chances are probably half the class is also wondering the same thing. So I'd be really glad to answer any questions if you've got them. Okay, well, option B is even easier because there wasn't, excuse me, there wasn't that annual series at the end. So option B was just, we have our original outflow cost, and then we find the present equivalent of the 4,100. And so option B is worth 14,285. So of the two, the decision that you should make is option A is better because it has the highest non-negative present worth. So we discounted everything at the MAR, and our decision criteria says select the highest non-negative present worth, and that's option A. So option A is better. Okay, now let's move on to the second one here, early termination. And let me tell you a little bit of conceptual details here about the early termination approach. Instead of making the short option longer, which is what we just did in contract services, early termination takes the opposite approach. It says, let's truncate the longer option. Let's make it shorter. And so here, option B was the one that lasted for 9 years. Instead of keeping it for its full useful life, what we could do instead is we could sell it at the end of 6 years and get some lump sum resale value. And so it's not a salvage value necessarily, it's just we're finding the market value of that equipment in a certain year. So any equipment that isn't past its useful life has some residual value. And so what we could do is we could find out how much the equipment is worth. And I've got a table here that summarizes the value of option B in each year. So initially its value is the same thing as its purchase price. But then over time, the longer you own the equipment, it begins to depreciate in a value, meaning it becomes less valuable because it's kind of worn out. And so if we were going to sell it in the 8th year, so if you're going to sell it at 8, you could get $1,800 for it. If you're going to sell it at 7, you could get $3,600. So we want to sell it at 6, and there's going to be a single lump sum amount at 6 on top of the annual series. We want to find out the present equivalent of all of them. Okay, so again, in this one, we're going to use 10%. Did I provide the 10% table? I did. There it is, the 10% table. So what we need to do is for both of these alternatives, find out the value at time 0 at 10% discount rate, and you're going to use the early termination for option B. So don't keep it the full 9 years, only keep it for 6. And instead of a couple of values of 4,100, you'll just get the single lump sum resale value. Okay, so again, I'm going to push you into those breakout rooms, maybe a different group this time, but then we'll revisit in about 8 or 9 minutes to look at the solution together. Okay, with the early termination, what we want to do is truncate the longer option. So instead of being 9 years, option B is only going to be 6. And so my suggestion is you prepare a revised cash flow diagram to illustrate that. So here you can see what my revised cash flow diagram looks like. I crossed out 7, 8, and 9 just to illustrate that those no longer apply. And I'm going to get a lump sum of $5,400 in year 6 because at 6 it has a remaining residual value of $5,400. So instead of getting $4,100 for 3 years, I'm just going to take a single $5,400 lump sum. That doesn't seem like a very good exchange, right? even at 10%. Too bad it's not worth more. All right, so option A is just going to be find P given A of the 5,000. So the lookup factor there is 4.3553. And I'll reiterate my recommendation that you shouldn't just go straight to the factor itself, especially on a test. On a test, it's really good that you write this to show me that you understood that this was a find P given A, that you're using the correct interest rate, that you know the correct N value. You know, there's partial credit you can get that wouldn't be available if you just have the wrong factor and no supporting explanation. So the lump sum value of option A is 10,276. And let's see how far we'd have to round that off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could say that to the nearest dollar. 10,277 would be our final answer there. Now, option B is a little more tricky because I want to find P given A of that $4,100 annual series. And then I have the lump sum value of 5,400 that needs to be taken to times 0 with the P/F function. Okay, so you can see kind of the structure of my solution here and then the numerical substitutions in the row below that. And the lump sum value at times 0 for option B is only $4,705. And so the conclusion is option A is better. The reason, it has the higher positive present worth when future values have been discounted at the MAR. So we should choose option A if we're going to do the early termination. Okay, so just to summarize, the three tools you have to deal with the problem of two alternatives that have different useful lives. You could use LCM, the least common multiple method. You could use early termination, which makes the long one short. Or you could use contract services, which makes the short one long. All right, well, let's take one final look at the announcements before we go our separate ways for today. You've got 2 days to put the finishing touches on homework 4. That's due on Wednesday the 24th. And then homework 5 is due a week from today. And the midterm exam we're going to have on Wednesday of next week. And then just also a reminder, the Friday class for this week is just going to be a recorded lecture, and I'll send you the link when that's available. But we'll have another live class meeting on Wednesday. All right, everybody, I hope you're doing well. I hope your power comes on soon if it's not already. Have a great day, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Can you go back to the